Good day, everybody. Wolf Driver coming at you live. I am podcasting, vodcasting, and broadcasting everything under the sun from the New Style Independent Studios once again. I've been doing this on a weekly basis now. I think this might be like the 9th or 10th episode. And let me get my video playing in the background. I apologize. So usually we've got a video playing alongside me. That is one of my adventures, and sometimes they could be as old as when I started recording them. I've been doing this stuff for like 30 years, so they could actually be I've got some that are probably 20-some years old, so you never know what you're going to see up there. Just to let you know, this is with a previous generation of Huskies, and one that's here today still. This is what I call the swin car, the dog dune buggy. It's really called a swin car. Think of it as an ATV kind of bike, actually more capable than most ATVs. And we find mountain roads that we just go, somebody's watching us here. We have people drop by all the time that we run the dogs on depending on the activity I'm doing. So I call this a little bit more extreme just because we'll do it almost anywhere. When we get to the bike trails, it's a little tamer where you see me with the dogs usually out in front. But this machine is probably the most incredible machine in the world, basically, for doing what it does. I say it's one of the most capable electric vehicles because of the suspension system, and it's made in France. I know I've touched on this before, so if you tuned in, you might know it. But you'll see, I mean, when I travel, it's quite a sight to see. I call it Wolf Driver on tour because we carry everything but the kitchen sink. From the van I use, depending on what we need equipment-wise, we'll take a trailer, I'll take a crew with me, and, of course, the dogs and whatever apparatuses I use personally to make this all happen. And you see a lot of other gear on there, and that's all to film this at different angles because it's really hard. Even though today I'm in a professional film studio, it's really hard to get a crew out on site without being part of a bigger broadcast. And I'm not. I'm a kind of a one-man show. I mean, I do this for the love of dogs, so I'm not doing this to be on any kind of reality TV or anything. And I'm actually coming to you here and being on social media to kind of spread the word. It's about the betterment of all dogs, but especially related to working breeds and focusing in on the Husky breed because, and that's Lola, by the way. She's still here. That was Zara and Chase and Jagger have already, they've crossed Rainbow Bridge, unfortunately, but they had full lives. But these dogs get such a bad racket, and it brings me into the topic to discuss of how cruel people really are. And when I say cruel, I'm just talking really about social media. I mean, how rude and uninformed. And the problem I have with it is that it spreads bad information. And of course, I'm not the first one to talk about this, but getting it firsthand experience-wise because of what I do. And this is, again, why I do it, because of the misinformation that's created by people that are so uninformed and will just spew off anything that comes to their mind. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, maybe a video's worth 1,000,000 words. But whatever comes to mind doesn't truly describe everything going on. I mean, there's a before the video and after the video or whatever. So you're not seeing the whole picture. So what I like to do is look at something, and if I have questions or I'm not sure what's going on, I love to ask. And on social media, people, everybody's an armchair quarterback. They don't want to ask a lot of times. A lot of times they want to point fingers and say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Excuse me. But it's really, sometimes it's comical, but a lot of times it's not hurtful to me because I don't care. I mean, I've been raised where, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt. I don't care what you say about me. I just don't want the wrong information to get out there in anything I'm associated with. So I get on social media and respond to virtually every comment, even people that are just totally don't care. They'll be like, oh, you're fat, Wolf Driver. So, who cares? But I'll respond to it a lot of times because in my way of thinking and the way I was brought up, I want to take everything head on, and I want to let people know that it's so important, no matter what someone says about you or thinks about you, as long as you know the truth here and you're a good person, good to yourself, good to your family, good to your neighbors, whatever, then who cares? I mean, as long as you're enjoying your life, who cares? Are they really going to affect your life? I mean, there's so many people out there that just get so taken back by someone saying, you're fat, you're ugly, all these negative comments, but what's it matter? I mean, it's mind-blowing how carried away people get, quite frankly. So, and that's, I'm talking about things like road rage. Somebody gets mad, they cut you off. Well, I mean, think about it. Maybe they meant to cut you off. I always look at that and say, you know what? That person, if something rude happens on the road, probably it wasn't against me. They don't know me. Maybe they don't like my driving, but it might possibly be nothing to do with me. They might have to get to the hospital. They have an emergency, or they might have to get somewhere to help a friend or something out, or they just got a bad day going on. So I just put it in my pipe and smoke it. I let it go in one ear and out of the other ear. And I just, never let that kind of stuff upset me. So some of it, you can call anger management maybe, but I've had many years in another lifetime, I call it, in the martial arts. So I learned that a lot of wasted energy happens by us getting upset and angry and all the emotions we go through. So I'm not saying be emotionless, but maybe just gauge it a little bit and put it into perspective. And a lot of what I witnessed, that doesn't happen enough. So the last video, one of the last videos I posted that is going viral, I'm fortunate enough to say what I do. A lot of people tune in because it's so unusual. You've never seen anything like it. I think outside the box. And again, trying to give that to others so they can do things that they didn't think were possible. I've kind of pioneered it, and they can get on the bandwagon and help their dog or help their lifestyle in some way. So the last video, and by the way, I'm live. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, please, and just want to be mean to me, I don't care. Put it down here on a comment in the comment section, and I'll try to address that personally while we're on the air, even if it's just a shout out. And if it's after the broadcast, I'll actually come back and try to comment back to you. And you can always comment on any of my posts in any way you'd like, in any concern. And I'll almost always address it like I said. So getting back to the last, by the way, this is in Tuscaroro National Forest in Pennsylvania, which is a huge mountain range, or a huge mountain at least, that, and you can see we're going uphill now. Just absolutely beautiful. And it's kind of desolate around there. I mean, once in a while, a car might pass through. You'll see a memorial here and there. I think this is the area. Unfortunately, some sort of plane crashed, a military plane, I believe it was, and they have a marker there. And I learned the history about it a little bit. It's kind of really interesting. And just looks like you're the back of nowhere, I call it, like Alaska somewhere. It's really cool. Of course, minus the snow. But I think it was pretty cold that day we were doing it. So back to what I was saying. So one of my latest viral videos has myself. We are on a trail that goes from Pennsylvania to West Virginia called the Panhandle Trail. And this we did last week, actually. We were on the trail, and I've been posting about it over the Thanksgiving holiday. What happened was the particular video that I posted, my co-pilot. So as I said, I run a team of people, not only a team of dogs, but I run a team of people. And I call him my co-pilot. And it started that way because a lot of the rigs when I first started were like the one you're seeing here that are two-seaters. So we call them tandems. That way someone can be with me on the bike. It's for when I run the dogs on the side of me, because I can't see exactly, my peripheral vision sees some, but I can't see behind me. And if a dog would drag behind or stop to go to the bathroom or whatever, I feel it. And I've got mirrors, but it's just quicker reaction time. And any injury or fatigue, whatever, someone can see it before me. If they're in the back seat, the passenger, they can keep an eye on the dogs easier than me in the front seat. So a lot of what I run today, when I'm not running the swin car, the dogs are out in front, so I can see all four dogs. But incredible area. So that's how co-pilot started. Now, my co-pilot today will actually follow me, or what I call ride point. So he'll go up ahead and see, oh, Bill, the trail's closed up ahead. I'm Bill, by the way, WooFDriver. Bill Hellman's my name, in case you can see it on my sweatshirt. So he'll be like, he'll walkie-talkie me and say, hey, the trail's closed up ahead, or look out, there's huge puddles, or maybe there's a dog up ahead. And that's what happened in the last video. There was actually a dog. So any dog on the trail, any wildlife, anything unusual, not unusual, but anyone else using the trail, they'll usually let me know. Like, hey, there's a jogger coming by you. Not that they're the trail police, because people have accused of us of that, and not that we have any more right being out there than anybody else. But it's nice to know what I'm coming upon so I can better prepare for that. And it's really about everybody being comfortable and safe, of course. So I've run into people that are so petrified of dogs, I don't even know why they're out on trails. I mean, so when they see my setup, which is actually when we're running the electric dog sled on wheels where the dogs are out in front, they're contained or restrained to a really small footprint to what someone would be walking. So sometimes they're side by side, of course, but they're still well within the I guess the lay of the trail, and they will not be able to deviate at all into somebody else's lane. Now, depending how tight the trail is, usually we run what they call rail trails. So they're usually double wide, which means to me that two recumbent trikes or bikes can pass each other, quads or trikes. So they're 6 foot, that would mean like a 6 foot lane or so. Not saying the whole trail is going to be like that. Not saying every trail's like that, but the majority is. And if it's not, there's usually a shoulder that you can grab if you need to. So it's really nice to know what's ahead of me, especially anything that might be problematic in some way. Reactive dogs can be problematic, and people know that have reactive dogs. Hey, they could be problematic with somebody else's dog. Just seeing them just sets them off. So they are really happy when my co-pilot goes ahead and says, hey, my partner's coming through and he's got 4 dogs in a sled dog rig that are totally under his control, but your dog might be reactive to that, or is your dog okay with that? Are you okay with that? So it's almost like a courtesy. I look on it like it's a flagman waving traffic, slowing, letting them know you might need to slow down or you might need to stop for a brief few seconds, minutes, whatever, to let our workers get through. Nobody ever has to stop for me. I'll always yield to everybody else, but some people prefer to stop for us or prefer to move over. That's their choice. So I'm always, if you don't know me, super respectful. I mean, I'm just grateful that I'm able to do what I do, and that there's so many wonderful trails and areas that we can share with others to do the most amazing thing that I do, to me, run the dogs. And you don't know how many people's days we make. They say, oh my gosh, you put a smile on my face. And when they have young children, it's just such a great experience for them. So if I'm stopped to water the dogs or on a break, of course, I'll try to be as respectful there as possible. Also, we'll move aside or move out of the way. Or again, my co-pilot will let me know nobody's coming. If I need to stop more in the trail, whatever. But if we're stopped, I'll even let people come up and pet the dog. So that's how I roll and what I do. So within this post that I did, some people were really taken back. By the way, one of the most problematic things are dogs off leash, because hopefully they're trained well. I've been masterfully trained of off leashing dogs. I call it free ranging. So I understand all the ins and outs and all the requirements and how the dogs should act. It doesn't mean that others' dogs act that way. So when we get to an off-leash dog, it becomes a whole nother issue, because is that dog trained enough? Do people have control enough? Because when 4 dogs come by in a rig like I'm riding, dogs look at it a few ways. Either it's a party and they want to join, or they need to be defensive and defend their territory. So it all depends on the situation, but almost all these trails that we ride on, leashed dogs are a requirement, and mine are beyond leashed because of their tight footprint and their restraint in two places with about an 8-inch tether on each side. If you haven't seen it, I'll share a picture of that, but that's how they are on the electric dog sled on wheels. So we ran into the woman. He said, "Hey, dog off leash. I'm going to ask her if she can control her dog or what we need to do to get me through," meaning the WooFDriver. So he talked to her, and she leashed her dog up immediately. And the dog did seem well-trained and capable, because when we passed the dog, it wasn't even acknowledging us. And in fact, my dogs were more acknowledging that dog than her dog was. So that was a wonderful experience. But people were concerned. I don't know why, because if a dog's off leash and violating the leash rules, and I'm not the trail police, but then that makes it possibly unsafe for others, either with dogs or without dogs. So after we passed the woman, when we were passing the woman, my co-pilot will also, if he can, if conditions are good and people are okay with it, he'll kind of ride as a buffer between myself and my dogs, of course, and the other person and their dogs, if there's room. So he did that just to keep all the dogs from even being interested in each other. Again, we didn't know how her dog was going to react. So people are like, "Oh, how dare you do that?" That's solid in the video. So I've had the experience. I've been doing this again for 30 years, been on the trails, and I've had with dogs. I've had the experience of dogs lunging, and never, luckily, a total attack. Never been attacked, I should say, but within probably a hair, maybe as close as an inch. And dogs have touched noses. I'm talking within a hair of me. So because a lot of times, and this was a big dog in particular just recently, last year, that the gentleman saw us. I don't think we were able to warn him because it was around a bend and my co-pilot at the time was behind me or whatever. And the gentleman knew we were coming through, and he walked his dog, which is fine. But his dog, he was big too. The dog and the gentleman leaped. He didn't expect it to. It lunged at us because, again, he didn't know I was going to react around other dogs. So I would have preferred he stepped off the side. I went around him. I went on the shoulder, got as far away as I could, and I got the dogs past first. And I'll take the blunt of the hit. I'd rather take it if something's going to get attacked than my dogs. That's how I am. So, and he was like, "Whoa, I didn't know that was going to happen," but I knew it could happen. So always good saying, expect the unexpected. In any case, we were this video had a lot of dynamics going on, from the dog handling to my co-pilot doing his thing, to a lot of people interested in the electric dog sled on wheels that I've designed, and what I call dog motorsports that makes this all possible. So a lot of conversation took place on this thread, on this post, and it was really interesting. And somebody forgetting about the dog off leash and all that good stuff. I remember one of the first few comments were just tearing me up. You shouldn't do this with dogs. That's not a healthy way of training them. And it's that those are the kind of comments a lot of times, because I do think that she had genuine concerns for the dogs. And I think that she's just so uneducated. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. I'm just laying the facts down. She's so uneducated in dogs, working breeds, that she saw what was happening and she's like, "Oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world." Now, did she realize that the electric dog sled on wheels is electric propelled? It's electric powered, so they don't have to pull the dogs. I like to, when people are concerned about this, dogs shouldn't be pulling, which they should be pulling. Some dogs, actually, a lot of dogs like to pull, but I like to refer them to what I call my webpage. Its URL is ALLDOGMUSH, alldogmush.com. And there, my 14-pound Chinese crested is actually on one of my rigs that I designed for her. Some of the videos she's by herself where I was teaching her, and the other videos she's actually with some of my sled dogs. So I like to say, she couldn't propel this vehicle for all the tea in China, for whatever it took. She could not move this vehicle. It was still lightweight, but I was on it. and she's all 14 pounds. She's a toy breed. So it's a really good example of the dogs not needing to pull. So somebody concerned about them pulling, which it's fine for them to pull, but because of just the way I guess humans are, they hear bad stories about sled dogs sometimes, or sled dog keepers, I should say, that their mind is shattered from it, and they don't realize, there's bad in everything, and because one person is bad and doesn't do something correctly, shouldn't tarnish the whole breeds, all of the breeds, and all of the people that do dog-powered sports and the dog sports, etc. So, it just some of the things that comes out of people's mouths, like this woman, because she was trying to argue her point of view. I love intelligent conversation, so I engaged her as much as possible to try to tamper all her misconceptions. And some people, we are the way we are, just so worried about being right that they can't accept sometimes that there are maybe other ways, and maybe they're not correct about what they thought. So they want to argue to the ends of the earth. I call it, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? So sometimes they, you got to tell them, okay, whatever you think, because you don't want to argue enough. You want to be happy, meaning me or the person, and however they want to argue, they can argue. But when it gets to dogs, I really want to make it so others reading the thread of the comments understand exactly what I'm doing and better understand working breeds and some of the requirements. Because if you can imagine, somebody might be reading this particular thread or looking at it and say, oh my gosh, what he's doing is bad. And then nobody should do this with dogs because of somebody that's misinformed or uneducated about it posted that's bad. And they might venture off to get a similar breed, a husky, etc. And when they get the dog, they might not realize that when you put it on a leash, a lot of them are going to probably pull your arm out of your socket. And if you're not fit or strong in any way, maybe you're a little, you're letting your little child walk the dog, that dog could probably get away from them. So, and it all starts that the dog needs to be worked out and exercised properly, usually what we call instinctual exercise, breed-specific exercise, to really well-round that dog so they can actually, I call it sow their oats. They can get the proper enrichment, not only physical, but the physical will stimulate psychological enrichment. And it's a deep topic, and I won't get into all of it here. Feel free to comment again in the thread here, because we are live, like I said, if you're watching now. But it's there's a lot that goes into that. So at times, huskies are one of the most abandoned and surrendered breeds at shelters, because people get them so much for their looks, especially around the holidays. People get dogs. I'm talking Christmas, etc. They get them as such cute, striking-looking puppies, and they take them home, and they're great puppies. And then all of a sudden, they get a little more mature, and they start, they turn into adults pretty quickly, because dogs age so much quicker than humans. And all of a sudden, I like to say, and I'm not trying to be mean, you got a beast on your hands. You better have an idea. And people are like, oh my God, this was such a bundle of fur, of fluff. And now this dog is pulling my arm out of my socket. He's chewing up the walls. He or she is escaping their kennel or their house and running to the neighbors' yards and wreaking havoc there, sometimes even killing small dogs, small animals, chickens, etc. And then they become considered nuisances in some towns and some municipalities because they escaped it, because it all stems back to them not being handled properly and their needs not being met. So that's why I am so I try to be so accurate in everything I post and answering everybody's question, so there's no misunderstanding on my part. And that turns into what I call the betterment of the breed and hopefully the betterment of all dogs. So depending on what you're doing, if you're getting a working breed, they need breed-specific exercise in some way. And I know I've had at length conversations about that with people because they're mean. Do you mean, if you get a fighting breed, you need to fight it? Of course not. There's other ways to have breed. It's humans that mess these dogs up. It's other ways to have breed-specific exercises. Like I don't need to be on a real sled. I can do this dog motorsports or dry land mushing, they call it, and I can assist the dogs using an electric motor, so I don't need the physicality or the commitment of a full-time musher, and the dog can be more of a pet to me than a working dog per se. Because if you have a team of Huskies, it's really hard to have a big team. It's really hard to have each one there on an individual level. So, I mean, some people do it, and I love it. But there's a fine line there, and that's why I do what I do. So I'm gonna check out, see if we got any questions. Lots of comments. So this is good conversation. Hopefully here. Like I said, you can say anything you want to me. My producer's gonna feed them to me. So big red dog, how you doing? Thanks so much for taking the time to comment. Is saying you're the man living the life. I really appreciate that. And again, I know it. I mean, I'm fortunate. I've kissed the ground every day that I'm able to do what I do. And it's worked out that way. It can happen with others too, because you don't need to be near as elaborate as I do to just live part of this dream. A regular bike will do it, and a dog or two, and you can be on your way to heaven. So thanks so much for the comment. I appreciate it. So Cheryl, great to see you again, Cheryl. I'd be overly impressed to run into you with a dog on a leash or not. Thanks so much, Cheryl. So I know Cheryl's a longtime follower and always supporting me. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you'll get to run into me sometime. Listen, we hope to tour the country at some point because there's so many places I want to see that are on my bucket list. Maybe go out west when it's not going into winter like we are now. We've flirted with the idea more towards the spring or summer. So that could be on the agenda in the coming days. But hopefully, and I've talked to some of my friends and people that follow me. They want me to do some of these festivals. Hopefully we can do it. I worked with a local rescue in Baltimore called Barks, and they have an Oktoberfest. So they asked me to kind of lead. They had a run. They teamed up with the city to lead the runners basically through Patterson Park, it's called, through the park. And they wanted me to start it off. It didn't work out to start off because we were worried I would clog up my dogs weren't even as fast as the runners at that point. They start off fast, but then they get into a walking pace. But they had me start off the race with one of the local news anchors in one of my tandem dog carts, my tandem rigs. And it was really cool. And we had musicians there. So we did the festival and everybody got to meet the dogs and they were just having a ball. And my dogs are woolies. So that means they're long haired on top of being a double coat. So they're just fluff and people just love petting them. And the dogs love the attention, to be quite frank with you, because they're family dogs. So thanks, Cheryl. Great to see you and hear from you again. Zico Ott. Hello. Thanks so much for taking the time to comment. I really appreciate that. And Mindy Green, all it takes is one bad move, puts stuff in a bad light. And that's so true. I mean, I like to say you can find good in everything, but you can also find bad in everything. So something bad happens and then it's tainted whatever that aspect may be, because no matter what, someone's going to say, well, this bad thing happened, even though a million good things have happened since or related to the topic, but just that one bad thing. And don't get me wrong. I mean, if something bad happens on one of our trips or our adventures or with one of the dogs, we want to, instead of berate it in a bad way, we want to find out why something bad happened and correct it. Now, people's behavior, their handling of dogs, and this is where sled dogs get a bad name, are all because there are some bad people, and there have been some bad people, and it's been documented. So it's not, like I said, never a fault of the dogs, but the people have set a bad precedent, and that's just the truest statement. Thank you so much for taking the time to comment. Tammy, great to see you. Can you go back to the last one? I missed Tammy's comment, Rod. Yeah. Good. Because I want to get catch up with Tammy because I never get to see you live. Well, or you don't get to see me live a lot of times. It's usually after the fact. Thank you for all your support and wonderful comments. I hope you're staying warm because I know you're in Kentucky and it's cold. It's cold everywhere now. In fact, we went to North Carolina yesterday to run the dogs. And I know people are going to say you're cruel because I was looking for some warmer weather. It's unseasonably cold, I think, throughout the East Coast here. So even in Florida, I think they were having some freeze warnings in some of the northern parts. But it's so cold. When I was up yesterday, it was 17 degrees in the morning, the feel-like temperature, the wind chill temperature. So it was 10 degrees warmer, which was still about 40 degrees in North Carolina, where we could get to about 300 miles from our home base, which is about a 6-hour drive. And I said, you know what? I mean, the dogs aren't geared up. If we were in the dead of winter, it's a different story taking them out to a little bit warmer temperatures. Again, anything is warm to the Huskies. They're never cold. They could go 70 below zero. But we're just getting into it, and they're just getting acclimated. So for me, I am too. It was easier to try to go these 10-degree warmer place. And believe me, when that sun lost in the sky, because it gets dark early, and by the time we got there, it's 12 o'clock. By the time we're on the trail, it's almost 2 o'clock. So it gets dark early. So the temperature was going down. So I was feeling it by the time we were done. Of course, the dogs were so fired up. So I hope you stay warm. I appreciate all your support and comments. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, Rod, next one. So Molin Labe, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering names. I'm not good at names. But Molin says, excellent information. Glad to see you. Someone preaching what I've known for years. I really appreciate that. It really helps all the support and taking the time to comment because again, others are viewing my content and they see bad stuff. And if we can kind of erase that bad vibe that people may have been tainted by, I think we can help all dogs, even if it's just one at a time. So really appreciate your comment. Thank you. And Mullen says again, the betterment of the owner, really, no such thing as a bad. Exactly. There is no such thing as a bad dog. And I've witnessed it a million times. A friend of mine who was my master trainer, he used to dedicate his time to go to shelters and retrain these dogs that were there because just they were with bad owners, so many of them, and they developed these bad habits, usually aggressiveness out of fear. So he would go there, especially he would work a lot, I believe, with pit bulls because he helped somebody set up kind of a pit bull sanctuary. And he just helped so many dogs work through these behavioral issues, and then they become attractive for people to adopt. So he saved so many dogs' lives. I mean, it brings a tear to my eye when I think about how he gave his time to do that. So there are no bad dogs. Exactly. Thank you again, Mullen. I appreciate it. So, and Mullen wants to know, how do your dogs do around firearms? The pit bull hates it. My pit bull hates it, hides in the house, which I'm okay with. Easier to keep him when I'm in a private range. So true. I try to desensitize all my dogs to almost everything I can because we're out there on trails. I travel the East Coast. If you don't know what I do, I travel up and down the East Coast to really find new trails on a weekly basis to try to take my dogs to just a new adventure for all of us to share in on the excitement. So I never know what I'm going to run into. And you asked about firearms. There's a lot of shooting ranges along these trails because they're in the middle of nowhere. And there's some of them are set up through the local government. Some of them maybe people are just making shooting ranges out there. But usually it's documented. They'll say shooting range. So we've got to be somewhat in the vicinity. So my dogs will hear that. So I want to condition them to that, as well as trains. Some of these trails, there's trains that almost share the trail. I mean, you could touch the train if you wanted to. That's how close they get. So I got to desensitize them to that. So these dogs I have now are really good about loud noises. But I feel as dogs get older and their hearing starts to go and they rely more on vibration, like fireworks, gunshots, and loud noises like that become more of an issue. So I've had a lot of Huskies, as I've talked about in the past, and I had some that as they got older, this theory proved true, fireworks started to become an issue, and I had to shelter them 4th of July and other occasions, they might do that. And if we were out on a trail, usually if I'm there and they're tethered to me or to what we're riding, they're okay. And I can comfort them. But if they're outside, just in the yard, just chilling, and fireworks start up, that's where it becomes a problem. With the younger dogs now, and some of the other dogs were fine as they aged, but I believe it's because their hearing starts to go as they age, and a lot of dogs are about vibration. They feel it. You might not feel it. They feel it. Their senses work that way. So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. I really do appreciate all this. So we're moving on to the next one. Cake's Daily Life. Hey, Dad. I don't know who you are, but I am the Pack Daddy. And I appreciate you taking the time to comment. I call myself the Pack Daddy. A lot of times people will say, even one dog, you're a pack with your dog. And that's so true. So we always want to be the leader, the Pack Daddy, to take care of our animals, quite frankly, and our children if we have them. So thank you. Thank you so much, Cakes. I appreciate that. Tammy, good morning. Yes, always great to see you. And again, it's so great to catch up with you on the live broadcast here.
That's the last one.
Okay. So back to what we were talking about. But I love the interaction, and it really gives people watching this, people reading it, a chance to learn, at least from a different perspective. I always like to say, because again, my experience in the martial arts, I'm always a student. So I can always learn. I certainly don't know it all. I don't know a quarter of it all, believe me. And I don't ever want to come off like I think I do. So whenever anybody has a relevant comment, concern, question, whatever, I love to hear it because, quite frankly, it might be something I didn't think of, or they might be doing something that I want to do. And that's how I learn so much. It's incredible what we can learn from others and how people can be doing the same thing. So another part about me, I'm dyslexic. So I don't reverse words or read backwards, which is more of a common dyslexic issue. What I do, I just can't express myself on paper as well as I can talking to you. But with dyslexics, what I learned, because I went to a dyslexic school, they'll put a math problem on the board and they'll ask the whole class, which were small classes. This was a small school. Solve the math problem. So if there's a dozen people in the class, the teacher of the class will go and say, okay, what's your answer? And probably almost everybody gets it right, because usually they're kind of simple questions, because they're trying to think they're trying to figure out the way you think, not the accuracy of your answer. I mean, it's important your accuracy too, but they'll say what I learned, that you can see so many people how they do their approach to a mathematical equation, and some of them you're like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought of solving the problem that way. And now you got a new way of thinking. And some of these ways that other people solve the problem, you are faster than the way you did it or you were doing it. So even though it might be a little more ingrained in our minds, our brains, of how to solve it, just add these two together, divide, and then multiply, etc. It's a lot of times less steps. And it might not come as easy to you because, again, your old ways are in your brain. But if you can retrain yourself, it's really incredible. So that brings me back to how people learn. And there's so many ways to do what we do and what we can do with dogs. And so many people who have spent so much time working their dogs, living lives with their dogs, find out so much, and they have so much to offer. A lot of times people don't want to share it, though, because, again, social media can be such a cruel place out there. And I didn't mention, but some people are just trolls. I mean, they want to go out there and they see a video that's going viral or a lot of activity on a video, and they want to just throw something that sounds so utterly ridiculous out there. So people will gang up on them and they'll get exposure. So, I mean, there's so many aspects that go on of what's actually happened, and you really have to be well-versed in social media to figure out what the heck's going on. So I try to do that, but I really am about, like I said, sharing everything for the betterment of the dogs and betterment of the breeds and just the betterment of life for everybody. And that's why I'm here doing this. So that next thing I want to touch on, which is perfect for the video. That's
we got a question.
Okay. My producer just let me know we have a question, and
This is on Instagram. It says, curious, what is your process for training your dogs? What do you pick up from your other dogs, and what has to be active to train? Have you ever had any specific behavioral issues? And if so, how have you fixed them?
okay, great question. I don't know if you heard that, and this is just the way that our broadcast goes here. We can't get all the comments to show up in one place. So my broadcaster let me know there was a question on Instagram basically asking, how do I have issues with dogs? I think what they were saying was, and who was saying that, Rod? Do you have a name?
It's SIIX.
SIIX is your handle. So, what I do, how I handle behavior, I think they're referring to behavioral issues with my dogs inside probably the dog, what I call the WOOF, WOOF pack, and maybe behavioral issues outside of that as well. So here's what I do. With my last other generations of dogs, I was much more concerned, and I took more time to really train individual aspects. A lot of those dogs, because I wasn't as knowledgeable talking about the early days, and a lot of times they train themselves and they train me in a bad way. So I got a lot of alpha behaviors from a lot of dogs and a lot of bickering, fighting, quite frankly, between some of them for alpha status, for territory, for food, for being near the opposite sex, etc. So those are big issues, and a lot of times people will get a dog. They already have maybe, especially a husky, and they want to add another husky to their household, and that can be problematic in so many ways, depending on what's transpired and what's been trained in your current husky, and of course the one you're going to bring in. So a lot of times it's really good to get them at the same time. You still have problems because I've been through it all, but it's a little easier to train out of them when they're from. If you get them at the same time and they can come from the same shelter they were together, the shelter can tell you, or if you're getting them from a breeder from the same breeder, and it's always better to adopt if you can. But a lot of people don't do that because they're looking for a specific dog, whatever. So if you're gonna, well, I might have two dogs. It's good to raise them together if possible. Not to say that's the end all be all, but what I do is I like to get the dog to bond to me first. So it's not always possible, like I said, to get two dogs. So when I have one dog and bring a new dog into a situation where I have a couple dogs, even just one, like I said, I'll take the one dog and spend individual time with that dog, usually sleeping with it in the same room as me in a crate because I want them to all be crate trained. And I'll leave my wife and go to another room in the house, live with that dog in the room, in the crate, give it more crate time than outside time, and gradually start giving it some freedom. And me be feeding the dog and being the main person that it interacts with until it's acclimated in some way. Because remember, when you take a dog from any situation and put it into a new situation, they're going to most likely have some sort of fear and definitely some sort of concern. So if you're there to comfort that dog and you're the only person that dog has to be with, then it's going to start relying on you. They're going to start relying on you. And when you're feeding that dog and walking that dog, and I get them on the bike as soon as possible, doing an activity with that dog, they start gaining some trust. And it happens pretty quickly because remember, dogs' lives are much quicker than human lives. So while this is all happening, that dog understands there's other dogs or another dog in the house because they're getting the scent of it because their smelling is so keen. Likewise, the other dogs are realizing that. So, but they're not able to act on it. They're not able to see the other dogs yet. I want them to create a bond with me. Usually, I'm talking, this happens usually within inside of a week or so, maybe a little longer depending on the dog. Once that process can take place, I mean, they're not going to be fully bond with you. Some dogs, it can take a lot longer, but at least I can introduce that dog to my other dogs after it's gotten to know me in some facet like I'm talking about. Once that happens, I take the other dogs or one dog, and I always do this one dog at a time, no matter how many I have, and introduce them on a leash. So I don't necessarily want one dog to be behind a fence per se, or a crate, and then take the other dog up to the other dog, because one dog is restrained, and that could be problematic with itself. It could just start the relationship off bad. So I like to take them to a mutual spot that neither dog's been to, and introduce the dogs on leash that way pretty quickly, and then walk them all together. Just the two dogs, walking them together. Sniff, I call it the 3-second rule. Sniff them for 3 seconds. Beyond that, anything can happen, meaning a fight, whatever. Let them sniff each other for 3 seconds and just start getting their mind focused on another activity. Just walking them down the street, walking them in the park, usually without other dogs around. I've also had some dogs that are kind of like my companion training dogs that can help me train somebody else's dog, because that dog is so not reactive and seen so much and desensitized to everything that they're just like, whatever goes. But this is the best way I found to introduce one dog, bring a new dog into the household. And then I do that for each of the dogs if I have more. Then I start the dog living with the other dogs inside of a crate, all in their individual crates, at dinner time, at sleep time, etc. So those are some of the ways. Sorry for taking time there to explain that, but it's important because so many people get these dogs and they think that they can just put them right together and they're going to work it out. So that could mean, a dog could, if it wanted to, and the right situation, could, God forbid, kill another dog, depending on the breed and the temperament and everything else. So never want that to happen. It's the worst thing in the world. And if they get off to the wrong start, it's really hard to correct it. So I really proceed like a turtle, just slow as possible, and try to get all the behaviors to work together. Because once it jives, it's usually pretty good. Also, spaying, neutering. If the dogs are spayed and neutered, it makes it so much easier lots of times. So it's not always possible, because you get a dog that might not be spayed or neutered yet, etc. So hopefully that answers your question. I appreciate it. But I real quickly, I've had so many fights, unfortunately, because I had a lot of alphaness in my packs, in my dogs. I will, and I know people will cringe, but I will use an electric collar. Now, electric collar gets another topic here. It gets such a bad name. And I work with some of the shelters, as I said, and just talking to the Humane Society of Baltimore, they were telling me that they don't even want anything to do with electric collars. And it happens because people don't know how to train them, and they make the dog so bad from using the electric collar that it negated all the behavior they were trying to correct. But I use them. I've been masterfully trained. So I've been trained by a master trainer to use electric collars, and they're like, I call them magic, because I've gotten dogs to accept each other that were fierce enemies through using an electric collar. And I'm not advising anybody to do this. Again, this is something I've been trained to do, but there are other professional trainers that you can counsel with, you can learn from, that can help you, especially if you're having dog aggression problems. So I'll keep that there. You can ask me any questions, but it's a really, it's a wonder tool for a breed like a Husky that is so independent and so prey driven that it's really hard to get their attention in any other way. So any more questions, Rod?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we've got more questions. Keep them coming. So I know I'm saying this wrong. So Mosky 2 FPV. I'm sorry about if I've said that wrong. What do you do with hard-headed dog that does not want to listen and wants to become his own alpha? So they want to know what I do with a hard-headed dog that wants to listen and become alpha. So again, that is a really tough quality to break. And there's always going to be, that with humans, there's always going to be so many different personalities. But with an alpha, with a dog that wants to be in control, I use the e-collar and totally correct them. At first, you have to teach the e-collar, of course, but then usually alpha dogs they're like bullies. As soon as they feel that electric collar, it's like when you, and I'm not promoting any violence here, don't get me wrong, but as soon as you punch a bully in the face, they usually like, oh my gosh, they're usually cower right away almost. So as soon as you can set an alpha dog in the right way, train it through e-collars or other methods that other trainers work for other trainers, then they usually can be set back and put into a place they can be better trained. I've done it, so I know it works because I've had these alpha huskies. So I hope that helps answer your question. Mullen, so kick ass, all right? Mullen says he rides dirt bikes, ATVs, looking for trails. I have my own private range in my property. That's so cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much when I've got these new vehicles, which are kind of like ATVs, basically. One of them is called the Swin car. That's one that TV when it's showing up now. The other one is called the Easy Raider, which is kind of like a single track ATV. You just stand on. It's got standing room, but it's got a small seat on it as well. But you're on one track. It's maybe 18, 20 inches wide. When I first got these vehicles, I was like, where can I take them? Because bike trails won't let them on there. And roads, they're not really made for roads. And that's why I started traveling to mountain ranges, basically, that are close to me in my area, relatively speaking, where I could find these dirt roads and stone roads that I could take these vehicles and ride all over, essentially. And I call it WooFDriver X. If you go to my website, you'll see a lot of extreme adventuring with the dog. So it's so cool. I love it. You know, I always say the dirtier the dog gets, the more they're having fun, the more they're loving it. And it's so true. The thicker the thicket. When we get back there in some of the real thick brush, which I don't love doing, but sometimes you get back there, the dog just loves it. They go crazy. Most dogs. Now it takes a lot more physicality on their part, and it's really a good workout because they're jumping over tall grasses and they're avoiding sticker bushes and everything in between. Thanks so much again for the comment. Any more, Ron?
We got one more on Instagram. Future Orb says, happy to see your dogs getting enough exercise. They seem happy. Our husky is happy as hiking and running.
Thank you so much. So another comment on Instagram was from Future Orb, if I'm saying that right. And they were mentioning that they're so happy to see my huskies getting the exercise they need as they are taking their huskies hiking and what else?
And running.
Hiking and running. And that's the greatest thing. And that's why, again, I'm doing this because there's so many ways to work huskies. They're just so physical and adventurous because of their prey drive, because of their it's bred in them, that if we can do these physical sports with them, it actually is psychological enrichment as well. So it's so cool. Whatever you can do with a husky, just getting them out there and being physical is what it's all about. So thank you so much for taking the time to comment. All the kind words you said and your support. I really do appreciate it. And whenever you can, I don't know if you can share pictures. Love to see pictures on Instagram. I can't remember. I do all my social media myself, but I know people on Facebook share pictures all the time of their dogs. Love to see you guys doing your stuff. Or if you have your own channel, please send me a link. Love to see it. Thanks so much again.
That was the last one.
Okay, great. So it brings me to the final topic I'll talk about for today, which is similar to what we're looking at here. So I want to start this new aspect of what I call my mushing, my electric mushing. I want to start taking the dogs, and I've done this before, but I want to find particular areas. So as I talked about going into the mountain ranges, there's a way, and I've just unlocked this key here to look up a place on the net, one of these bicycle places. I think it's the 10 top inclines or grades that you can ride on your bicycle. So what I want to do is take the dogs to these areas. They're all over Maryland because I looked up Maryland first because that's where we're based out of. And take them and climb these mountainsides, basically, because I know those are the toughest grades in the area because they've been ranked that way. And I know with these ATV-like bikes that I've been telling you about, from the Swin car you see here to the Easy Raider, which is the single-track ATV, basically, that they can climb them. And the dogs I know can climb them. The greatest thing about the way they're tethered to these bikes, they can't pull them. So they're not going to pull them, but it gives me a way of safely getting the dog up that mountainside and giving the dog the exercise of just basically trotting along and climbing that mountain. So it's pretty intense. It's funny because I was talking to a musher a few years back on social media, and they were saying, "You think climbing mountains are good exercise for the dogs? That doesn't exercise. That they need more than that." They were telling me that it wasn't enough doing what we do. So when I get to some of these grades, I'm talking intense grades. I believe like 18%, 20%. I mean, it's almost like vertical. And I forget the formula, dyslexia setting in here, of how they calculate the grades because there's a formula. But when you get to them almost in a vertical pattern and you see the dogs climbing, you know it's good exercise. Now, what I wanted to do is visit as many of these ranked grades or steep hills, climbs, etc., that I can here in Maryland and then move on to another state. These are what I saw anywhere from, I believe, 3 mile, 4 mile, they averaged out climbs. So I'd like to do that with the dogs, and that would be our activity for the day. So I look to do different activities once every other day, once every few days, depending on how intense the last activity we did and how quick the dogs recovered. And of course, time for everybody, my time, their time's always there, but talking about their batteries, how charged they are, for lack of a better description there. So I want to do this almost like an electric Iditarod because it's kind of a challenge. And my dogs are at the right age for doing it. Though I've done it with older dogs, this mountain climbing, to me and my experience, has worked really well for the dogs. And when you can go slow enough that they can take their time and develop their muscles to do it. And my dogs are conditioned enough to do it, but as they get more conditioned, their speed will pick up a little bit. So doing these different exercises, almost like cross training, can really help handle or hit all the muscle groups so they can become what I call almost bulletproof, less likely to tear a muscle that they just used for something that they never use, and or more likely to be able to keep physically fit without injuring other muscles and other parts of their body because of they're so well rounded, the physical regimen I try to give them. That's what it's all about. So it'll be interesting. If we're going to try tomorrow, that's on my agenda. I got my team going with me. Now, some of these areas I want to go are roadways that you can bike on. So 2 issues there. And I know what people are thinking: roadways, asphalt. And that was the other issue in the social media post that I told you was going viral, where I was on the Panhandle Trail last week. So many people, gosh, I mean, it's like you said something bad about their parents, just go crazy about when they see the dogs on asphalt. And me doing this for almost 30 years running dogs, I know what my dogs can handle and what's safe for them or not. And I do appreciate others' concerns. I mean, I'm thankful and grateful. But when people get out there, social media, they accuse you of something that they don't know, because I'm doing this stuff. I'm living and breathing this stuff every day. But the thing that troubles me the most is others seeing it. Now, blacktop asphalt is not great to do every day, of course, for obvious reasons. But doing it in the rotation of other surfaces, grass, dirt, gravel, etc., it's very beneficial for building proper pad callus on their paws so they're toughened up, and also maintaining proper claw lengths. And what I mean by that is their claws will wear down. And if you overdo it, their claws will wear down to the point where they'll bleed. So, and if you overdo it, or you don't know what your dog's capable of, you can go out there and you can mess their pads up, you'll injure their pads. So what I'm saying is, though, if you do it in moderation, like most things in life, the best done in moderation, but consistency to keep that callus and keep the claw lengths, proper lengths, it makes their pads really tough and less likely to have an injury, less injury prone when you do run into circumstances that are more trying on them. One thing I wanted to say with their claws, somebody on social media, and I didn't know this, like I said, I don't know everything, and there's so many people out there that have such good experiences and knowledge because they're working with other dogs and they're working even with huskies, etc. But they had a breed, I forget what it was, that their nails got so long, I don't know if they just grew so fast, and the dog had an issue. Maybe it was just that breed or that dog. I can't remember. But the nail was so intense that they actually had to run it. The veterinarian says, you need to take this dog out on a hard surface like asphalt or concrete and let it walk or run it, whatever they were doing, because they couldn't cut the nails. I mean, either it was the thickness of them or the experience, the dog, because it's really, it can be stressful to cut a dog's nails. I mean, they make these hammocks for groomers that they put the dogs kind of free floating in the air, kind of hanging there in the hammock. And they're able to work on their nails with a Dremel tool, which is like grinding them down, or with a nail clipper. But this dog, for some reason, they couldn't cut the nails without, I don't know, all kinds of issues. So they actually had to get on concrete and asphalt on a pretty not, I'm not going to say daily, but a pretty I forget, he told me the timing. Had some kind of regiment where they had to get the dogs there on that basis because of the nail issue. So there's a lot that goes into that. Asphalt for me, and I'm not saying dogs don't need booties, or we use sometimes non-toxic waxes like Musher Secret, they call it. I'm not saying they don't, because chances are almost every dog at some point in their life, if you're active with them and if you're on hard surfaces especially, are going to need some sort of paw protection. But usually dogs, when they're younger, are able to pick their paws up higher because as they get older, they get more age-related mobility issues, and it's harder to pick the paws up, so they're more likely to have more friction, which will cause the issues with the paw pads and the claws. So, but on the other side of that, it's easier for dogs to run on a smooth surface as they get older because they don't have to pick their pads up as high. So, like I said, there's good and bad in everything. You have to sort it out and know what's best for you. But I always carry booties. I always carry paw waxes, pad waxes, because I never know what I'm going to run into. I mean, you could get an injury and the dog can't walk on that paw and you have to booty it up. Or you could get to a area we venture year round. If it was too hot, I take a laser thermometer with me. If it's too hot, booty them up, etc. So, but we're usually not near those conditions. But I'll give you a real good example before I move on. That with we ran into where they were. It was in the cooler time of the year. We ran into somewhere they were paving a road, and they said, "Oh, you can cross now." The pavement was dry, and I'm like, "No." I had to take my laser thermometer just to make sure even though it was cold outside, pavement's hot, of course, just to make sure it had cured enough and cooled enough to be able to take the dogs on, or I would have bootied them up if there was no other way out. Or, of course, I'll pick them up if I have to, one dog at a time, and that's why I travel with the team. So, in any case, going to this, I'm just trying to get you back into my feed here. I'm going to replay this. Going back to what I'm doing, and let me see if I can play this. I don't know if I can. Sorry, let me see here. Good old Facebook, good old YouTube. Let's see if it goes to the next video. No, that's not. Sorry, folks. WooFDriver's having technical issues. Let me get out of that and go back to it. We'll leave the screen blank. I'm going to get out of here. There we go. Sorry. I don't know where my videos are. Okay. Leave that screen blank. So we're going to wrap it up here soon anyway. But going back to the mountain climbing, the hill incline climbing, that's going to be really interesting to do. And I hope to keep everyone updated here. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please let me know. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Next week, we're going to have a special guest who I think is going to semi-interview me, have some good conversation. I don't know her personally, but from what I understand, she's interviewed a lot of athletes, and she might have some interesting questions that everyone would be interested in seeing and hearing and all that good stuff. So I'm the Wolf Driver once again. I'm going to sign off. Really enjoyed today's show as usual. I'm always out there on the trails. Hopefully I'll run into you that are watching this trail if you're in the USA. And I'd love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate to leave any comments anywhere along my social media, and I'll do my best